Why is Goblin Piledriver never sad? Because he has protection from the blues.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further as you can use the promo code MTGMudsta to get you 5% off anything on the site. Or if you're in Canada like me, you can use the same promo code at Multizone to get 10% off your orders of singles. If cards aren't what you're looking for, Original Magic Art has playmats, tokens, and sweet art that you can use that same promo code to help you get 5% off your order there. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game was filmed at the Montreal Open back in 2021, and Colin from Cardboard Command has joined us, playing Torbran. He keeps 3 mountains, Handweir Garrison, Pyrohemia, Faithless Looting, and a Cunning Spark Mage. Daniel is back playing Saheeli the Gifted, keeping Ulamog the Infinite Gyre, Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, Ugin the Ineffable, Academy Ruins, Snow-Covered Island, and a Darksteel Citadel. New to the channel is Johnny playing Tiamat, keeping 3 mountains, Sacred Foundry, Inferno of the Star Mounts, Dryad of the Ilsean Grove, and Chromatic Lantern. The last player is also new, with James playing Zacama, keeping City of Brass, Rhythm of the Wild, Clifftop Retreat, Rootbound Crag, Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, Sarkhan's Unsealing, and a Forest. James wins the die roll and starts us off. He draws for his turn and plays a Forest, passing a Colin. Colin plays a Mountain and casts Faithless Looting, drawing 2 and discarding 2. Daniel draws and plays a Darksteel Citadel. Johnny plays a tapped Sacred Foundry in his main phase after drawing and passing. James plays a Rootbound Crag. Colin draws and plays another mountain. Daniel draws and plays another artifact land with a Seed of the Synod and passes to Johnny. Johnny draws, plays a mountain, and passes. James has a Clifftop Retreat for turn, and has enough to cast Selvala, Heart of the Wilds. With nothing else, he passes to Colin. Colin plays another mountain, which isn't a big surprise considering he's playing a mono-red deck, and casts a tapped Fire Diamond and passes turn. Daniel plays a Snow-Covered Island and passes. Johnny plays a mountain and then pays 3 for Chromatic Lantern. James has another Forest for turn and casts Shalai, Voice of Plenty, drawing a card from Selvala, seeing it enter, and then passing to Colin. Colin plays a Buried Ruin and has enough mana at this point for Torbran and passes turn. Daniel just draws, plays an Academy Ruins, and passes. Johnny draws and doubles up on the lands tapping for whatever he wants with a Dryad of Ilsean Grove, and then plays another mountain and then an Indatha Triome as his lands for turn, and passes back to James. James plays a Canopy Vista and has enough mana for Sigarda, Host of Herons, drawing yet another card off Selvala as it enters, and passes turn. Colin draws, and in his main phase, has him casting a Darksteel Plate. Once the equipment's resolved, he equips it to Torbran, and passes turn. Daniel draws, and plays a Snow-Covered Island. He casts one of my new favorite cards, Wandering Archaic, and passes to Johnny. Johnny draws, and casts a Ramos, Dragon Engine, and passes turn. James draws and then plays an Exotic Orchard for his turn. He then floats 10 mana and casts Zacama, drawing a card off Selvala, and then tapping his lands, and floats a green. He then follows up with a Balefire Dragon, and moves to combat. He swings Shalai at Colin and Sigarda at Daniel, and they both take their hits. With nothing else, James passes. After Colin draws, his main phase has Pyrohemia coming into play, but with nothing else, he passes to Daniel. Daniel draws and casts a Pendril Mist to help tax the table a bit, but then passes to Johnny. Johnny pays 2 mana on his upkeep to keep his creatures alive, and draws for turn. He doesn't have anything to do though, and ships the turn. During his end step, Colin activates Pyrohemia to deal 3 damage to all creatures and all opponents. This also kills Selvala before she can be untapped again and used for mana, and we then move to James's turn. James pays 4 mana on his upkeep to keep his creatures alive and draws for turn. he plays a City of Brass for turn, and then uses it, losing 1, to help cast Rhythm of the Wilds. Moving to combat, he swings everything at Daniel because player removal is the best enchantment removal. Daniel chumps some of Zacama damage with the Wandering Archaic since it would die to the Balefire Dragon anyway, but it still takes a ton of damage, not to mention that 5 of it is Zacama damage that's been trampled over. After that, James then passes to Colin. Colin pays the 1 to keep Torbran alive in his upkeep, and draws. Once more he activates Pyrohemia 3 times, and thanks to Torbran, deals 9 damage to everyone. He decides not to attack with Rhythm of the Wilds on the battlefield, and just passes turn. Daniel draws, and finally finds some red mana, but unfortunately in the most painful of ways. He plays a Shivan Reef, and then casts Ugin the Ineffable. He then downticks Ugin to destroy the Rhythm of the Wild, and passes to Johnny. Johnny just draws, casts Kakusho, and passes. James draws, and in his main phase casts Sarkhan's Unsealing, and then follows up with his own Dryad of the Elysian Grove, but unfortunately has no extra lands or land to play, and has to pass to Colin. Colin draws, and casts an Emberwild Captain, becoming the king of the table. He also makes a deal with Daniel to not kill him, but promises that Daniel won't stop him from doing something crazy, and passes turn, drawing off the Monarchy. Daniel draws, and gets to cast a free Soul Ring thanks to Ugin. This gives him some extra mana to play with, and he's able to cast Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger thanks to the discount, and he exiles James's Dryad and Unsealing with the cast trigger. Daniel also makes a deal with Johnny to not sacrifice Kakusho immediately so he won't die, and then upticks Ugin to make a Spirit Token, and passes to Johnny. Johnny pays for Kakusho on his upkeep and then draws. He plays a Forest, and is able to cast Tiamat, tutoring up a Scion of the Ur-Dragon, Bladewing the Risen, a Tarka Worldrender, Old Gnawbone, and Morophon, putting them to hand. After all that, he passes to James. James draws and casts a Terror of the Peaks, and then passes. At the end of turn, Colin uses a red Elemental Blast to destroy the Pendrell Mists, and then moves to his turn. Colin draws, and moves straight to combat. He swings the Emberwild Captain at James for 6, thanks to Torbran, and James just takes it. Colin then opts to leave up mana for Pyrohemia, passing and drawing for the Monarchy. Daniel draws and finds his second red source with a snow-covered mountain. Moving to combat, he swings Ulamog at James, exiling James's top 20 cards. James also decides to just take the hit, and takes 10. After combat, Daniel casts a Sandstone Oracle, drawing 5 cards, and once that's done, casts a God Pharaoh statue. Daniel then passes, dealing 1 to everyone at the end of turn with a statue. Johnny draws and casts a Dockside Extortionist. Colin responds by finally finishing off Daniel and James with Pyrohemia, not to mention dealing 12 damage to the creatures, and to Johnny. Kakusho dies at this point, which drains Colin for 5, and Johnny gains 5. The Dockside then enters, making 3 treasures, which Johnny uses to help cast Morophon, who comes into play and he names dragons, and then casts a free Scion of the Ur-Dragon. Colin draws, and activates Pyrohemia twice to wipe away Johnny's board, and deals 6 damage to him. He then casts a Hanawir Garrison, and swings Torbran at Johnny for 4. Johnny takes the hit. Colin then draws at the end of turn. Johnny draws, and casts an Inferno of the Star Mounts in his main phase, and goes to combat swinging it at Colin for 6. With the dragon connecting, he becomes the Monarch, and passes, drawing a card. Colin draws, but at this point has enough mana to dump into Pyrohemia to kill Johnny and win the game. Game review time. So that was a fun one, although I do feel a little bit bad for Daniel, who seemed to not be doing too much unfortunately. But once he got that Ugin out, it seemed like his deck certainly sped up a little bit. I think not having red probably kept him off most of his game, but sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. I thought Johnny's Tiamat deck was pretty spicy, And when you get to cast your commander and tutor for 5 sweet dragon cards, I'm always a fan. And I love seeing little synergies like Morophon being able to cheat out Scion for free. I was actually a little bit surprised that James wasn't able to do more with Zacama, although I guess a lot of his mana wasn't coming from his lands but Sylvala instead. That's probably why Colin decided to take her out, and by that point James had certainly established himself as archenemy of the table, despite the fact that Torbran and Pyrohemia were out. Speaking of Torbran and Pyrohemia, my goodness was that strong with that Darksteel plate mixed into it. Basically being able to lightning bolt everyone on the table except for yourself was pretty incredible. And I loved how the deck came together. A lot of this was basically luck since Colin didn't even get to tutor and he only cast that one Faithless Looting, which makes this kind of win all that more satisfying since he basically drew into it. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.